This podcast details true crime cases. It contains adult themes and may contain descriptions of violence. It is not intended for children. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and Happy New Year. We're starting off the new year with a special episode for all of you. One of the most popular episodes of this podcast, which was actually released as a two-parter way back in the day, was a story about a woman by the name of Jodi Arias. Now, of course, to most of you who follow true crime, this name is somewhat infamous. And I'll just give you a really brief little summary so you can just kind of recollect what happened in this case. In 2008, a 30-year-old man named Travis Alexander was brutally murdered in his home in Mesa, Arizona. His ex-girlfriend, Jodi Arias, was convicted for this slaying in 2013 and later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A new Lifetime movie being aired for the first time this weekend tells the behind-the-scenes story of Jodi's life behind bars. In this follow-up to one of Lifetime's most successful true crime dramas, Jodi Arias' Dirty Little Secret, we will see a whole new side of Jodi and follow the story that has captivated our audience for nearly a decade. Jodi Arias' Bad Behind Bars is produced for Lifetime by Cineflix Productions, and it premieres, like I said, this Saturday, January 21st at 8/7 Central. Selena Sinden is the actress who stars in the new movie as Jodi, who has just been arrested and sent to prison while she awaits trial for murdering her boyfriend, Travis Alexander. When she arrives in jail, Jodi charms her way through prison and befriends a couple, Donavan Bering and Tracy Brown. The three women become friends, and Jodi quickly inserts herself in their relationship and later manipulates them to do her bidding. And as we'll see in the movie, they're not the only ones who fall prey to Jodi's devious charms. Donavan was released from prison as Jodi's trial drew near, and she had agreed to be Jodi's supporter on the outside by posting on her social media pages and defending her friend to the world. But when the details of the case and Jodi's story were no longer adding up, and Donavan refused to continue to do her former friend's bidding, Jodi's vengeful side emerged. So I'm very excited to introduce Donavan Bering as my special guest, who can describe for us the real Jodi Arias and the story we think we all know, but perhaps no one knows as well as she does. So welcome, Donavan. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
If you've already started feeling bad about not following through on those New Year's resolutions, I've got an easy way for you to start feeling good about yourself and protect your family's future at the same time. And that's by spending only about 10 minutes and finally getting that life insurance policy you've been procrastinating on. Fabric by Gerber Life is the easy one-stop shop you need to protect your family's financial future if the unexpected ever happens. And Fabric also provides other family finance solutions all in one place. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Yep, in just 10 minutes you can apply, see your quote, and then personalize your quote to fit your family's needs. You could be offered coverage instantly, with no health exam required, saving you even more time and money. Protect your family today with Fabric by Gerber Life. Apply today in just 10 minutes at meetfabric.com/once. That's meetfabric.com/once. meetfabric.com/once. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. On the call with me also, because she is also fascinated by the Jodi Arias case and has spent time along with me researching it, is my sidekick, my partner in crime, and my co-producer, Lorena. Hey, Lorena.
Hey, Esther. Happy New Year, everyone. And Donovan, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I guess we want to just start with a little bit of a timeline, Donovan. I know that we watched the movie, and both Lorena and I this morning were trying to figure out, okay, so how did things happen? Because what I was trying to get straight in my head was, so when you first met her, she was in jail awaiting like her trial, correct? Like she hadn't yet gone through that. So I think there was like kind of two parts to this, where part of it she was sitting in jail waiting, for her trial to begin and all of that. But then later on, it was in another setting. Is that correct? Or maybe you could just tell us a little bit of how you met her, where, and the timeline of that.
I met her when they first brought her in when she was being brought back to California, and they were starting to investigate her involvement. So I met her when she first came in, and we immediately became friends immediately because we both were kind of nervous and skippy in there, and we just kind of drew to each other. We played cards and things like that and got to know each other. But I didn't know what she was in there for at first. She was very secretive.
So I have a question. In the film, we see that Tracy is her cellmate. Is that how you guys became friends instantly?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
so
true.
that is true. Okay.
Yes, it is.
So I guess my question then to begin with is, you said, you immediately connected. What was your first impression of her? Like what, I guess two parts. What was your first impression of her, and what was kind of the buzz, if I can use that word, when she came in? Because in the movie, it kind of shows that people were against her right away. They thought she was a snitch or something like that. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit about the first impressions of her and how she came across.
Well, when she first came in, she came across, that's right. People thought she was a snitch, that she'd been brought in because she was this very quiet. We were trying to put together what she was in there for because she was very secretive. Nobody knew. So that's why the first impression of that she was being brought in to find out information on people's cases. So that's why we thought that. But she was very quiet. She stayed to herself, and she seemed kind of scared. So she just was very to herself, never really pushed herself onto anybody, and just stayed to herself.
So did she reach out to you first, or did you kind of like reach out to her, like make
Well,
an overture,
she was she was cellmates to Tracy, so I got to know her because Tracy would come down all the time. We'd spend time together, so we started playing cards, and she started coming down to watch TV with me, and that's how we kind of got to know each other because she was cellmates with Tracy. So of course I saw her and spent time with her, but at first trying to get along with her because she didn't know why she was in there for. She was very hesitant and very concerned about why she was in there.
So when did she actually start sharing with you, like how soon after you met her did she start sharing with you anything about her case?
It was when she started doing interviews. She started being taken out at all times, that all different times she was being brought out of the cell. And then we were trying to figure out what she was in there for. We knew it had to be something major after a while because of how she was being treated. And then I didn't get to know exactly what was going on until probably a good 3 weeks maybe when she was in there, because she started talking to Tracy, and then they started opening up about that. And then I got to know more about what was going on. She didn't really open up a lot because she was told not to talk about her case. But then she started getting into with her family and stuff and having visits.
And that was so odd to me, because you're saying that, nobody really knew, because on the outside, of course, this was a huge story, right? It was a story, it was in the news, it was, and then of course, when a trial began, it became even bigger because it was televised and all of that. But even at the time, I believe it was a pretty, big story, at least in Arizona. And then it kind of grew even bigger than that. Right. So
Yeah.
that's strange that how is that nobody knew? Did they keep things pretty, like, you guys don't have access to,
We have no
news?
access to the news in there. They keep
Wow.
things very quiet. You don't get to watch the news. You don't get to hear what's going on. And unless somebody was to go to court with her or sit in on one of her hearings, nobody would know. So you're kept quiet. Like you said, there's no news. You don't get to watch the news in there on TV. So none of us had any idea of what she was in there for, even though it was big on the outside. Us on the inside had no idea.
Yeah, I guess that was surprising to me. Was it surprising to you, Lorena, when you saw
Yeah,
that?
definitely. Especially I was, 2008. I was still in high school when this happened. And that's kind of, I mean,
Please,
even
come on.
before, even before,
Making us feel old. Stop it.
even before I got this job and stuff, I've always been super into true crime. So I remember that was huge. I'm actually from Siskiyou County. My brother-in-law actually went to school with Jodi Arias from Wairika. I had gone to the restaurant that her family owned in Wairika. It's about 20 miles north of where I grew up in Siskiyou County, so very northern California. So it was a big deal. I remember, Interstate 5, the long interstate that goes through California, just so many media news outlet trucks going up the highway, heading up to Wairika, very small county, and it was huge. The poor family, what they all had to go through was wild. And yeah, I remember my brother-in-law being like, I remember her in school, and yeah, she was very quiet. She wasn't anything like, she wasn't a bad kid or anything. So it was a wild story.
When we found out about it, we all were floored. We could not believe that this individual that came in there that was so timid, so quiet, just seemed did not fit the crime at all. In our eyes, when you're in there, she did not fit the role. So we were all very floored when the information started coming out of what she was really in there for.
I just have one question. I've never been to prison. Would you say like you guys were open to, meeting new friends in prison? So when she came in, was it like, hey, let's welcome her with open arms? Or was it like, we don't know what she's in for, so let's kind of keep our distance at first?
It was keeping the distance. Everybody kept the distance because they didn't know, like I said, they didn't know what she was in there for. They didn't know if she was a plant or a snitch. So everybody pretty much stayed away from her and didn't want anything to do with her. They wanted her out of there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It seems like, at least what the movie portrays, is that, and also news reports that we got, because we did see some of the interviews, because we were, here, we watched some of the interviews, and Miranda was just talking about watching an older one that came out. But what we see is that, like you said, she comes in, she presents as very timid, very shy, very scared, very, all of those things. But then did you feel like it switched, like her attitude or her persona switched a little bit when she started being like interviewed? Like almost what they kind of show is that she really enjoyed that, and she almost kind of gloated in it that people were interviewing her, but it was still a secret. But you could tell that in the movie it kind of shows her almost cocky in a way. Did you get any of that? Was that any of that true?
Yes, she loved being interviewed, and she was worn nice. Tracy would tell her not to talk about it, not to do these interviews, but Jodi loved it. She loved the attention. She loved making sure she had her makeup, that she looked just right. It's almost like she was a movie star. She loved the attention. And
did that carry over into how she treated like you guys, or the way she acted when she was there, in the jail around everybody else?
She still stayed quiet, and she never discussed with anybody else. Even though people started realizing what she was in there for, she stayed to herself. And when she would go out, people knew when she was going out to do interviews and that, because the way she would act, she would come back and she would talk. Of course, she would talk about who she just talked to and what they were talking about, but only did open up to a few people like myself and Tracy, and everybody else she stayed really quiet too.
So that was probably pretty smart, right? Because I think you can make enemies there if you're going around acting like you're big shot or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So then she starts to tell you the story, I guess, because of course now information's coming out of, that there was a murder or something. And I guess her story at first, well, we know on the outside, like her story changed several times. So what did she first tell you and Tracy about what happened or why she was there?
She started out with the intruders, that there were intruders that came in. She did the ninja story. Wow. To where the people were dressed up and that it wasn't her, and that she got away from it, that her life was saved. And then she started, when things started coming out, then she would start changing her story. But then you got to understand, I started getting close to the family, started meeting her family and stuff.
Was that when you were still in jail, or was that later on? That was a question I had too.
I vaguely got to know them while I was in prison, and then of course when I got out was when we agreed to meet up and everything, because it was arranged while I was in prison that I was gonna hook up with her mom and stuff when I got out of jail.
That was one of the things I was really interested to ask you about, because we know a little bit about her family, but we know that she told a lot of stories about them that basically were false, like she said about a lot of things. So was that the thing that kind of started to make you doubt, or was that way later on? What was the first thing that kind of made you doubt what she was telling you?
When she was telling stories, when I saw her being so vindictive towards her family, if they didn't do certain things that she wanted, and she'd become very vindictive, she would turn on them very quickly. It didn't phase her to threaten them or to. It just was a side to her. It was like a light switch would just flip, and I started getting kind of hesitant, wondering, you know, was she really this person that she came across as being? Because it just the way she would treat her mom or treat her dad or just in general, or she would treat me if things didn't go the way she wanted it to go.
That right there, I think, is the key to like what I think you told in this story, about her and then what's portrayed in the movie, and something that I had picked up on way back when I covered this case, because I did, from the information that I could get, not knowing her, from the outside, was just the stories that people had told over during the trial, like things that you'd heard from her family or friends or ex-boyfriends or whoever was around her. There was this really, like you said, this light switch. I think that's the perfect way to phrase it, the way you said it, because what it seemed like, what we saw in her life and what you guys saw up close and personal, because when you were in there with her, was that she could seem very charming and she could seem very nice and friendly and all of those things. But the whole time she's working on getting you to do what she wants you to do. And then when at any moment, and the same thing, this is what I picked up even with her family way at the beginning, was that as soon as they did something that went against what she wanted, she would say you betrayed her. And once you betrayed her, you were her enemy. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's perfect. That's well, perfect. You hit it right on. That's exactly what would happen if she felt you betrayed her. She had a wrath. She had a big following. She did. She had a lot of followers, and a lot of them, weren't exactly the nicest. And she felt you betrayed her, she would attack. That was pretty much the easiest way of saying it is she would attack. So she had people that would do things for her if she knew that they weren't the nicest things, if that makes sense. Mm. So I mean, I got turned on if I didn't do certain things to her, and it was horrible because you started seeing a side. Things started changing when things started getting further along, and you would just, like I said, it was back to the light switch. You would just see that she was fine. She was a certain way as long as you did everything she wanted. She was perfect. She was this perfect individual. But the minute you started to question or not wanting to do certain things, then you saw a different side to her.
On episode 43 of Once Upon a Crime, I covered the case of the murder of Travis Alexander by Jodi Arias. The title of the series was A Woman Scorned, and I told Arias' story in 2 parts. When Jodi was just a teen, her parents admonished her about a silly teenage transgression. I described Jodi's over-the-top response to this so-called betrayal by her parents in this audio clip from part 1.
Jodi was a good student and didn't get into trouble. That is, until she was about 14 years old. That year, it was discovered by her parents that she and her friend Patty were growing a marijuana plant on the roof of the area's house. It was just one of those silly things that young teens do. But Bill and Sandra were angry and also alarmed. They felt that this kind of incident could lead their daughter down the wrong path. So they decided to try and scare her straight. They called the sheriff's office and turned their daughter in. The officer arrived, and while he just gave the girls a stern lecture, probably believing this was all they needed to learn their lesson, Jodi's reaction was one of immediate anger towards her parents. She felt betrayed by them, she told friends, and now she hated them. After that, Jodi became paranoid, believing that her parents were constantly snooping on her. She stopped talking to them except to accuse them of spying on her. Her parents would later say that they did not snoop on her after the first incident, but Jodi became more secretive and began to lie to her parents about simple things. She would also fly into rages, especially towards her mother, and even was physically violent with her on occasion, kicking her once and pushing her.
On a winter night in a small community near Denver, Colorado, Jim Matthews arrived home expecting to see his 12-year-old daughter Janelle safely ensconced at home. She had been out that evening at a Christmas concert, but had been dropped off at home afterward. But when Jim called out to her, the house was eerily quiet. All he found was his daughter's shoes, a clue that she had been there. But Janelle had vanished. It wasn't until 35 years later in 2019, when Janelle Matthews' remains were found, that police turned their attention to a man who had claimed years earlier to have some information about Janelle's disappearance. The police had dismissed him as someone who was either obsessed with the case, perhaps a true crime fanatic, or an amateur armchair detective, and had not taken him seriously. But is that all he was? Or was he, in reality, a killer? Wondery and Campside Media's podcast Suspect is back for season 2 with a story that attempts to separate one man's true crime obsession from a motive for murder. If you love a story with a mystery at its core and full of twists and turns you didn't see coming, then like me, you'll love Suspect. Make sure to add it to your podcast playlist. Listen to Suspect wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Hey, Prime members, you can binge the entire series ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today. Before Donavan was released from jail, Jodi got her to agree to be her mouthpiece on the outside. She wanted Donavan to spread the word of her so-called innocence in the murder of Travis Alexander. Donavan registered and ran Jodi's social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter and gave interviews to media outlets at Jodi's direction. That was a question I had, like, were these people that were like writing to her? Like, how did she get connected with these people? Do you know?
Oh, she had like a fan club. People started out of the woodwork and started being her like fan club.
Wow.
She started having these followers and these people that wanted to, they would do anything she wanted. They would send her money. They would send her books, anything, that she needed, she could reach out to them. And some of them weren't the nicest people.
Wow. So
they weren't like you really wanted to be.
You were being threatened in real life.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes.
And so it had to be at her urging, right? It had to be they were following her. They were following what she wanted. So it had to be, initially coming from her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she easily could have put a stop to a lot of it, but she wouldn't.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of this was going on with people that were, as you call them, her followers, as you would say. She could have put a stop to a lot of it, but she didn't.
How would you deal with that? Like, were your hands just tied that you're like, I have to make this, I have to tweet this now? Or were you kind of at that point just so fed up that you were taking it? Or like, how did you deal with it at that time?
It got to where eventually I stopped doing it. When she started turning on her family, then I couldn't tolerate it anymore. Gotcha. I just couldn't. So I locked myself out of locked the account where nobody could get it, and I wouldn't post the stuff anymore that she wanted me to post. I called it the wrath of Jodi. And you got to remember, Tracy was her roommate too, so Tracy would guide me too, and to make sure she would try to make sure that I was protected. So it was a really strange situation when I look back on it, because so many things were allowed to happen.
That's one of the things I was going to ask you, because we had heard rumors about this, and I guess it kind of hinted that, but not quite in the movie. Did you see that she was doing, getting, I guess relationships or some kind of exchange with guards in prison, that she was getting extra privileges? Was there something like that you guys know about that, or was that true?
In jail, yeah, that was true. She got special treatment. Yes, and she was again cellmates with Tracy, and they would get special treatments at nighttime, and the lights would go out and things like that. It was true. She developed relationships with not that I ever see it. No, you never saw it. Everything's always kept private. But as for the rumors about it, yes, it was true.
Yeah. So, And again, she has a little bit more, I guess you could say, power because of her notoriety, right? Because this was such a big story, and because she had, like you said, these followers, which is something that we didn't really know here on the outside. She has all of these followers. That to me was the most surprising thing about the movie, but that she had these people on the outside doing these things for her, or doing things like the guy that's doing all the computer stuff, or all of these things. Yeah, we had no idea about that. So this is pretty eye-opening about how that. So people have to watch the movie to get the details of it, but it's pretty interesting to see. But it makes sense because it was such a big case and people were following it. And it doesn't matter. It's what we found here in true crime. It doesn't matter how the terrible things people have done, if they have some kind of like infamy, or they're known, or they're considered like a celebrity and people want to be around them. It's just, it's a crazy thing, but it's true, right? Yeah. And you got to experience that firsthand of how that plays out in real life, right?
Yes. Yes. I used to have people get a hold of me that wanted to get in touch with her, or wanted to do stuff for her. She wanted me to contact certain people, like famous people themselves, that she wanted me to contact because she thought that they'd want to talk to her or interview her. So she was like a celebrity.
Yeah. So, and I also wanted to go backwards because you talked about her family, and that was something that was really interesting to me because we didn't know a lot about her family. Of course, we know they were in court all the time. They're in court supporting her, and they just seemed like the way that I kind of came to know just when I was doing research on them, just seemed to be a normal family who loved their kids, did the best they could, worked hard. That's the impression I got. What was the impression you got? Because you became friends with them, you got to know them well. What was your impression of the Arias family, her parents?
They were a typical family. They did everything. The mom stood behind her daughter. She was there every day that she could be there in court. They lost everything. They lost their business. They lost friends. They lost so much because of what Jodi was accused of doing. Family was a normal family. The mom was a typical mom. Like I said, would do anything for her kids. The dad was, had his illness and stuff and was dealing with that. But at the same time, Jodi played on that.
So you said her mom was very supportive of her, but what sense did you get from her family about what kind of person Jodi was? And was that surprising to you, or did they share any of that with you?
Of course, I learned about the troubles that Jodi had, that she wasn't this, as she came across, as a prim and proper individual. But I got to learn, about things and that she was growing up, and the things that, typical, I like to say a typical child. I was told a lot of stuff that, come to find out toward the end, wasn't true. But I think that the family did what they could to protect her, but at the same time didn't realize that their life was going to be torn upside down.
Yeah, that's so crazy to me, because you're saying on the one hand, Jodi had all of these supporters who would do anything for her, and then all of this, and yet her family is out here who did nothing. They're not the ones that killed Travis Alexander, and they're losing their business. They're getting all kinds of hate from people and things. It's just so weird how people do this to families of these people. It's not their doing. It's not their fault. It just seems really unfair. So it seemed like you kind of switched your allegiance from Jodi to her parents because they're the ones that were really the victims, right?
Yes. Especially when Jodi started attacking them, and then I started seeing what she was doing. That's when it bothered me because her family suffered so much. Her other siblings and them suffered horribly. It just seemed so weird of all the backlash that they were getting. And like you said, they didn't have anything to do with it. It was a child that did it.
Right. What was Jodi's response to everything that her parents were going through? Did she ever, try to show remorse or make it up to them in any way, or anything like that?
No, she didn't care. No, she didn't care, because a lot of times she would cause trouble for them. She didn't care. If they didn't play along, she had her own people that would turn on them. She didn't care.
That's crazy. And and something like that, you would typically think, oh, well, the parents must have been horrible to her or whatever, but you never found any of that to be true, correct?
No, I didn't. And then
Yeah.
when she started attacking them and started certain accusations and stuff, is when I started really realizing and pulling away
Yeah.
that things just weren't right.
Once you
Do you
started
think
pulling away, did she catch on to that quickly, and then the threats and stuff started pretty
Yes,
quickly? Wow. So
yes,
she knows what she's doing then.
yeah. Oh yeah, she knew.
do you think did her parents did they characterize her like kind of as a problem child, or was it just like, is this normal stuff? We don't know why she would do something, like this, or why she acts out this way. What was your impression of kind of what they thought about, Jodi as their child growing up?
Jodi caused him some hassles. I want to say she was a typical teenager, but she wasn't, because a typical teenager doesn't do what she was doing. I would hear stories of things that she did, from the person that first came into the jail to the person that I started to know, and started to know not only through herself but through her parents and stuff. There was two different people.
Yeah, that's pretty clear from everything that we've learned about her. Is there's definitely two different people that live inside, and she can, like you said, switch it back and forth as needed to get what she wants, or to try to manipulate people. And then she even turned on them,
Yes,
and
she did.
said they were abusive, and told these terrible stories about how they would abuse her and things like that. And that was something did you believe that she had kind of gleaned from other stories you heard, like Tracy's life or other people's, right? Like she kind of
Yes,
picked those people's stories and turned it into her own to get sympathy. Is that right?
yes, she did. Yes, she did. And her and Tracy would spend a lot of times talking. And there's it really, when she started talking about the abuse and stuff, was after she had her and Tracy became very, very good friends. And then she started playing the abuse part of it, because that fit in at the time frame of could help her out.
Jodi Arias gave several versions of the events on the day Travis was murdered, beginning when she was first interviewed by the police. Here's a clip from part 2 of the Jodi Arias story on Once Upon a Crime, describing her various versions.
Now, Jodi's story had changed 3 times. First, she said she wasn't present when the murder took place. Second, she said she had been there, but masked intruders had killed him. And finally, she had admitted she had been there and she had killed him, but only in self-defense. Now, 3 years after her arrest and 3 versions later, the defense offered to take a plea deal. Arias would plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for a specific term, serving from 10 to 22 years in prison. The prosecution said no dice. They were not willing to negotiate and believed they had all the evidence they needed to prove Arias guilty of premeditated murder.
I don't know about you, but looking over my personal finance files for 2022 was a real eye-opener. I realized that I didn't have a good handle on managing my money, including keeping track of my spending and automatic subscription charges, like streaming services, magazine subscriptions, etc. Don't you hate it when you get that notification about a subscription you just paid for automatically and no longer even access or use? So I'm excited to tell you all about Rocket Money. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills, all in one place. I found it a breeze to cancel subscriptions I no longer want or need with the click of one button. Just find the subscription you don't want and hit cancel. Easy peasy. And no more long hold times with customer service. If you can even figure out what phone number to call, right? Over 3 million people have used Rocket Money, saving an average of $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/once. That's rocketmoney.com/once. rocketmoney.com/once.
So you were released before Tracy. Did you feel like there was kind of like a strain on your relationship with Tracy? Like you were on the outside hearing all and like seeing everything that was going on, but yet Tracy was still on the inside with her, and she was still, growing this relationship with Jodi. Do you feel like there was kind of a strain there between the two of you?
Trey's very protective of me. She wanted me to stop. She wanted me to get out way sooner than I did.
Gotcha.
Because she saw stuff that was going on that I didn't see. And Tracy went to prison before Jodi did, because Jodi stayed in county jail up until when she was sentenced for years. So, but Tracy knew things and saw things and wanted me, tried protecting me, tried getting me out of the whole thing because she saw what was going on.
Gotcha. So if anything, it made your relationship stronger.
Yes, it did.
Awesome. That's awesome.
When was the last time that you talked to her or had any contact with Jodi Arias?
It was after her sentencing.
Okay.
Wow.
So after her sentencing, did she contact you? I assume she did. She contacted you.
Yes, she did. She contacted me.
And at that point, you weren't responding to her before that? Was she just trying to get back, to get you to talk to her again, or what was the scenario?
Well, we had a couple of falling outs that where I came back and started talking to her again. But as for doing her stuff, she had found other people to do her, as I call, do her bidding.
Mm-hmm.
She had found other people that would do stuff that I wouldn't do for her. So I was mainly there for her mom and her family, not more for Jodi. I was there for her family because
Wow.
I watched her mom go through this horrible, losing everything they had.
At what point was it still during the trial, or was it until the sentencing that you finally came to terms that she was guilty?
Before the sentencing, I realized she was guilty because of course, she said that she had told us that what she had done, and everybody knew that she had done it. But it was, like I said, I stayed there for her mom.
Gotcha.
Even because I saw her mom, like I said, I saw her mom go through such horrible things, her and her dad, and I was there for them because Jodi didn't care one way or the other what happened.
Are both of her parents still living now?
No, her father passed away.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought one of them had passed. So are you still in contact with her mother? Are you still friends?
No, I don't.
No. So you just distance yourself in this kind of.
I totally distanced myself.
Yeah. And so I want to know, like, how are you doing now? How
Yeah.
what's I
How
mean,
are you
obviously you've got this very exciting thing with the movie and everything. So you've been keeping busy for sure. So how are you doing? What's going on for
I'm doing okay.
Donovan? Yeah.
I'm doing okay. Yeah, I lost my wife. She passed away.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Did not know that.
yeah, she passed away last month. So
Oh,
this is
God.
kind of like a, I don't know. It's something I'm really proud of, this movie.
You should be. And
Very
especially-
proud.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It tells your story with her, and that you have that. You'll have that. So it's
Forever.
a very. Yeah, it's a very loving story too. I really enjoyed that part of that. Like, you guys went through so much together, but you stayed, strong for each other and, watched out for each other. That was really amazing. So, and that's not something everybody can say that they get to have in their life. So you're very blessed that way for sure.
Well, Tracy went through a lot of, because of Jodi, she went through a lot of stuff when she was in prison. She got repercussions from me being involved with Jodi and stuff and being involved with her family, but we stuck strong through it. And like I said, even though Tracy was in prison and all this was going on, she still made sure she had my back, was telling me, looking out for me.
Yeah, watching out for you, of course, and wanting, and of course you wanted the best for her as well. So that's amazing. I guess my last question is, how do you think, if Jodi sees this, how is she going to respond to your side of the story?
I don't know, to be honest. I've wondered that myself. I'm sure she's going to be mad because I took away. She's thinking that I'm, getting famous, as she puts it, on her, because of her. But I don't know. I really would hope that she would see that something good came out of it. I guess is me and Tracy's the whole part of it, that we were still together. We stayed together through all of it. To this day, I still get falling out with haters, and I call them haters, will contact me and stuff, and because of that, they say I turned on Jodi and this and that. But it's something that I hope that I'm going to have forever. I had an amazing wife. I got a good relationship, and I learned a lot about myself through it all.
Definitely. That's one thing that I really enjoyed about the film. Obviously, this case captured the nation because of, it was essentially, everything sex, beautiful woman, attractive man, brutal murder. Everybody was captivated by it. But this story told it from a whole different side. It wasn't even Jodi's side. It was your story. And I honestly didn't know about it until Tracy Speed reached out to us, and I had no idea. So just to see it from a whole different angle is what I really enjoyed about the film. And I think they portrayed it pretty well, especially now speaking to you. And a lot of it seems like it was the truth,
Yes, it was.
In the beginning, it says some things were altered for dramatical purposes or whatever. But after speaking to you, it sounds like it was pretty spot on.
Yes, it was.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. I really I'm going to encourage people to watch it because I think it tells a really interesting side, like you said, we haven't seen, and also it tells a love story, which everybody loves, is a love story. So that's a great part of it as well. And just to see the strength that you guys had going through this. And you said you hope that she sees that something good would come out of this, but I got a feeling that Jodi Arias is not not a person who's geared to see the good in things like this. Unless it benefits her, I don't think she cares. Like you said, she just doesn't care. But I think that the world does. I think that they do, and I think that they'll really enjoy seeing this side of the story and getting to know a little bit more about Jodi Arias. And it's really amazing to me there's still people that support her. That will never
it's never going to end. It'll never end. She has so many followers, and it amazes me to this day.
Yeah, I mean, what is it could they see in that they would want to follow? But it takes all kinds, I guess. What are you gonna do? But I just want to thank you, and thank you so much for Donavan for coming on, for telling us your story, for sharing your story, not just with us, but with the world. I think it's something that I know that my listeners are going to be really interested in, and the movie was really well done. I'm glad to hear, like Lorena said, that it really stuck closely to the facts of your true story. So that's great. And yeah, just thank you so much. Thank you so much. And, condolences for your loss. But I'm just amazed that, and happy that you had such a wonderful life with Tracy. So
I did. Thank you so much for having me.
That will do it for this episode of Once Upon a Crime. I'd like to thank my special guest, Donavan Bering, for being on the show. Make sure to set your DVRs and watch Bad Behind Bars, Jodi Arias, premiering this Saturday, January 21st at 8/7 Central on Lifetime. Once Upon a Crime is written and produced by me, Esther Ludlow. My research and production assistant is Lorena Garcia. I hope you'll come back next week when we kick off our very first series of 2023. And this one's a doozy, a really bizarre true crime story. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, be good to one another.